thank you for joining my channel today. This is the Facts on JW channel, and today we are going to be discussing Jehovah's Witnesses and misogyny. As you know, Jehovah's Witnesses are a patriarchal society where women are to view men as their head, and only men can hold positions of responsibility and teaching in the congregation. How many women here have felt like they have been mistreated or treated as second-class citizens in the Jehovah's Witness religion? I know I have. And how many of you ex-Jehovah's Witness men here have been the misogynistic men who have felt like, well, you were entitled because you're a man and you get to do what you want, boss women around, and hopefully you have learned not to do that anymore. But Jehovah's Witnesses, even though there have been, misogyny has always existed, but what makes Jehovah's Witnesses unique in that is that because they are a cult, and most cults usually are typically misogynistic, and they like to cherry pick scripture and take it out of context and run with it and act like this is what God is saying, this is what Jehovah is saying. So it makes for a very difficult life, especially as a woman and children. So the head of a wife in a Jehovah's Witness mind is her husband, and the spiritual head of a sister is her brother, a brother in the congregation. A female witness is not to pray in front of a male witness and must wear a head covering in order to pray in front of an unbaptized man or conduct a meeting in front of other sisters. This is a bit of an unusual practice that Watchtower participates in, and typically the covering of choice is a tea towel or a paper napkin. I personally have used a scarf, I believe. So, and I have seen some women wear paper napkins because I think they're just not prepared for it, so they don't typically carry anything with them because there's usually a man there. So, and then the other thing is, one thing that really just irks me about all of this and kind of made me a little bit angry researching this information is like they don't allow women to even say a prayer in front of a man if he's baptized, or if it's a male child that's baptized. If the child is male and he's baptized and he's like 10, 11, 12, the woman can no longer, even if it's his mother, say a prayer in front of him. It's just crazy. So, and then of course, if he is not baptized, Jehovah's Witness, then she can say a prayer in front of him, or she can conduct a Bible study, but I guess the Bible study would have to be with a head covering. So I just find this very annoying because other religious groups, other, say, Christians that are not high control, they don't care if women say a prayer in front of men or children or males. So I just wish that they would do away with this extreme misogyny. And even though the Watchtower speaks against domestic violence, and I'm not going to use this term too much because I'm not sure how many times I can use that word, so from now on I'm going to say domestic issues. So even though the Watchtower definitely speaks against it in their articles, but they praise women for staying with husbands who do this, unless their life is threatened. I mean, so you're saying that a woman has to wait and not leave until her life is threatened by him? I mean, how much must she endure? And at the same time, they don't let you divorce. Like, they say that you're basically stuck unless somebody has an affair. So wait, let me get this straight. So if I'm a woman who is in a very terrible domestic issue, then the best way for me to get divorced is to go have an affair. So they're basically just pushing people into having affairs by saying things like that. I even heard of a case where there was this one guy who claimed that he had like a one night stand and just to get out of a unhappy marriage, and he didn't actually do that. He just said that, and they let him get divorced, and they just reproved him. So that's one way to do it, I guess. But the thing is too, though, that the Watchtower publications, they have a strange kind of Stepford wife feel to the women. They want the women to be like in the kitchen and the men in the living room, and that more of kind of a 1950s style marriage. So, you know, it's very robotic, supposedly. The women, you know, are to remain quiet and, you know, and just endure, you know. Well, let me ask you this. What if the man is squandering money? But he's the man, you know, he's got to make all the decisions for the family. Then what do you do? You can separate. Okay, well, what if he like took all of your money and he steals your identity? I've heard of situations like that too. Are you supposed to, you can't get divorced from him? I mean, you kind of need to at that point. I mean, there's so much gray area in here that they're trying to make everything black and white, and it cannot happen that way. But they use the scriptures. They cherry pick scriptures to try to go along with their patriarchal, misogynistic ways. And I was reading over some information in the Watchtower, a 2012 article, if you want to look it up, February 15th. And it tells a story. I'm sure it's probably fake, who knows. But it says this lady named Selma recalls a lesson she learned from the witnesses who studied with her. So she was a Bible student who was studying with the witnesses, and her husband was a very violent person, and he hit her, and when she was trying to prove a point. And so she told the sister this, like, hey, you know, my husband, you know, he's kind of mean, you know. And so the sister was like, well, why don't we read 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 7? Oh, okay, yeah, because apparently the Bible has the answers to every life's questions. Everything in there can definitely be found in the Bible. Well, let's just see. What does 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7 say? And I will read it to you. 1 Corinthians... I know you feel like you're in a meeting right now. Don't worry, I won't take too long. So this sister quoted her 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, that basically just says that love is patient and kind and is not jealous, blah, 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 right? Oh, okay, so if my husband is having domestic issues with me, well, you know, that I should show him love. Well, have you ever thought of just using your own brain for a minute and saying, you know what, I don't need to take this. It's not a good idea. And that is not what love is all about. Love is not about enduring until you are pummeled, you know. So she tells her, hey, you know what, you know, love, just be patient, even though your husband is having these domestic issues. And then she was like, oh, you know, my husband Steve, he just never does anything loving for me. And then she was like, well, how many of those acts of love do you show towards your husband? Lady, he doesn't deserve it. Did you not get that? I mean, it's so annoying to even read this. So she was like, oh, well, none, no, for he is so difficult to live with. Imagine so. I mean, he's hitting you. And then the sister was like, well, Selma, who is trying to be the Christian here, you or Steve? And realizing that I needed to adjust my thinking, Yeah, I prayed to Jehovah to help me be more loving towards Steve, even though he didn't deserve it because he was a piece of you know what. Slowly, things started to change. After 17 years, Steve accepted the truth. Okay, so that made him a better person. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've read in jw.org and they were like, yeah, her husband used to be like really like a piece of you know what, and then before he was a baptized Jehovah's Witness. But hey, he learned the truth and that changed everything. Actually, I beg to differ on that. Most of the men I have met that were not Jehovah's Witnesses were way, way better, way more gentlemen. And the Jehovah's Witness men that I've been around, most of the time, they were very chauvinistic. And I can tell you a story about myself. Fortunately, I was not in a relationship with the man I was with at one time who was a Jehovah's Witness. He was not so mean, but I noticed a lot of the elders in the congregation were, and it's almost like they would try to put us against each other. I remember one time there was this elder who went up to my then husband and said, "Hey, you need to tell your wife that she needs to fill in and do a part next week." And he was like, "Well, she's right over there. Why don't you tell her yourself?" But he just told my then husband, and then my husband was like, "Hey, brother so and so told you got a part next week." And I was like, "Wait a second. He didn't tell me that." So I, in spite, did not do the part just to prove a point because I was mad that he didn't come up to me and tell me himself. I mean, hello, I'm totally capable. I don't need a man to do, you don't need to go up to the man for the man to go and tell me. I mean, hello, just tell me. So they got so upset about that they even had some stupid little talk about it like the next week. And they didn't call out my name, but they were basically pointing fingers at me. And I just remember, I guess for years and years, I would go to the meetings and I would be extremely angry. And I just hate that feeling. I don't want to feel angry. I don't want to feel just rage, just because I go to the Kingdom Hall. And I'm so glad I'm free of that. So I feel more at peace now that I'm not going there. It's a very unhealthy place to go. It's a place filled with anxiety, depression, guilt, fear. It's just too many negative feelings and emotions, and everybody's judging each other. Of course, I'm sure everybody has said this that has a YouTube channel. You walk into the Kingdom Hall and you feel like everybody's talking about you. And I definitely felt that way. I felt very awkward, very uncomfortable. But then whenever I'd come home, I would gossip about people in the congregation anyways, and it's almost like you have so much anxiety built up that gossiping and judging other people was like your only outlet. And I'm sure everybody had done that at some point, judging people, gossiping about people. And then when you go to the Kingdom Hall, you feel judged and you feel uncomfortable. It's just a very terrible feeling to go to the Kingdom Hall and just feel like everyone is judging you. And honestly, I really think too, it's boredom as well. Like if somebody gets up to go to the bathroom, everybody's like, "Oh wow, oh good, a distraction. I am so bored to tears, I can't stand it." And I think that is one of it. The reasons why all eyes are on you too if you get up and go to the bathroom because they're so bored. Because I've been to other churches and it's not like that at all. Nobody cares, everybody's pretty chill and they're not so judgmental. So back to the whole headship thing and Jehovah's Witnesses and their view of women and wives. Here's what they have to say about a wife. A wife who is foolish does not hesitate to speak unfavorably of her husband, whereas a wise woman works to increase the respect that her children and others have for him. Such a wife is careful not to undermine her husband's headship by nagging him or arguing with him. There is also the matter of being economical. A foolish woman likely squanders her family's hard-earned resources. A supportive wife is not like that. So let me ask you this. What about men? What if they're the ones squandering the money? Why does it have to be always the woman's fault here? What if the man is squandering money? What if the man is nagging and irritating and obnoxious? And then they say she cooperates with her husband in financial matters. Her way of doing things is marked by prudence and economy. She does not pressure her husband to work overtime. Being exemplary in a supportive role may be a challenge for a wife when her husband makes a decision she disagrees with. So, well, what if the woman wants to make some decisions because maybe she's better at making certain decisions on things? And she's not allowed to say, oh, no, 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 because he's the man. That is not a marriage, okay? That is more like a boss slash manager. Like your husband is your manager and he's kind of like bossing you around, or he's your boss, and you have to ask permission to do anything. Like that is not a marriage. A marriage is an equal partnership with different roles. It is not I'm the boss because I'm the man situation. The Awake of 2008 covers the topic of violence against women. What is the Bible's view? Even though it speaks against violence towards women, but it also mentions that women should be submissive to their husbands. And it goes back to more Old Testament examples where women were treated as their husband's collateral, which is a concept that is at the heart of the dominance and mistreatment of women over the centuries. So I wouldn't even think, honestly, that women were really treated like an actual wife should be treated. They were just maybe possessions, and this has been going on throughout centuries. Although in many lands, like in the U.S., women do have equal rights, but in some countries, they still don't. So I think the problem is that using the Bible to justify a man being bossy and being a tyrant is not okay. And that is not what the Bible is saying. It's basically human beings are misinterpreting the Bible. They're misinterpreting what the scriptures are saying. And it's, again, I go back to a man and a woman. They get married. It's an equal partnership. You give respect, you receive respect. It's a give and a take. There's no other reason for it to be any different, just because you happen to be opposite genders. So that kind of is annoying to me, but I just wish that people would use their mind and try to realize that, hey, just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I need to endure torture, or a man, as well. Like sometimes you have the opposite problem going on. So either way, you just have to treat each other with respect, and that way you have a happy marriage. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that the Bible has all the answers to help men who may be mistreating their wives. And unfortunately, they misinterpret the Bible. Their view of women is not okay. It is not. And Christians out there do not agree with the way Jehovah's Witnesses treat their wives. So Jehovah's Witnesses give an example of this couple. They use the names are Valerie and Troy. So Valerie says that this was before they were Jehovah's Witnesses. Her husband slapped her so hard on their wedding night, or the night of their engagement, that she had a bruise for a week. And he apologized profusely, but then he was very, very terrible husband. I mean, everything would set him off. He was constantly hitting her, and she lived in fear. And you're just like, okay, well, why are you staying with him? And a lot of times women stay because they have children and they don't feel like they have anywhere else to go. Maybe there's financial reasons that they stay. But the problem is that if you stay with these kind of men, they're just going to teach your children that this is normal. So it's not okay to stay in those situations for your children. And if you're worried about money, there are places where you can go, homeless shelters that help battered women and their children. And I'm sure there's probably family members that would be willing to help you out. So I wouldn't be too concerned with that. I would be more concerned about getting out of a very terrible situation like that. So Valerie and Troy go on to tell their story, and that they started studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses, and then everything was all great, and he learned how a man should treat his wife, and he stopped being this terrible person. I don't believe that story. I think that that is not true. I think it's a made-up story, first of all. And most, like I have said before, most of the Jehovah's Witness men out there that I've been around are male chauvinists, and they're mean, and they don't treat their wives with respect. But I've been around men who aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're way more loving and kind and considerate and respectful. So Jehovah's Witnesses, you might want to take some notes from Christians out there, or from really anyone who knows how to treat their wives with respect. Not that you have to be a Christian, but just people who know how to treat each other with respect. That's all that matters. And you might want to take some pointers on that. Sometimes women are afraid to leave their husbands that are mean because they fear that it would get worse. I've heard situations of stalking and things like that. So yeah, it can get pretty terrible sometimes, but that's exactly why you should leave. And sometimes you may have to go incognito so that they don't find you. But there are resources out there to help women and children who are in difficult situations like that. So I hope this makes a lot of sense to everybody, and that I would never want to see anyone to be in a situation where they feel that they're stuck. That is not the way life is supposed to be. You're supposed to be with the person that you love because you enjoy their company. They're supposed to be your best friend. And God does not want you to stay with someone and be miserable. And if you are worried that the only way out is to commit adultery, it's just a terrible way to think of things. That is not the way it should be. In the Watchtower Study Edition of 2016 in August, they give a story of a lady who says that she was very independent and took care of herself. So when she got married, it was an adjustment for her. And it wasn't easy for her to learn how to be submissive to her husband. So, but then, of course, praying about it, and that was supposed to make everything all better. These stories, they're no good. And then they give another example. Well, what if an unbelieving mate chooses to separate? Okay. Well, the Bible says, if the unbelieving one chooses to depart, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not bound under such circumstances, but God has called you to peace. That's what it says in 1 Corinthians. But that does not mean that the Christian is now scripturally free to remarry. Oh, no. There is no obligation to try to force the unbelieving mate to remain. And then, so their hope is that the unbelieving mate will return. Okay, well, what if he doesn't return? What if he gets divorced from you? And then what? Are you just You're just going to be like, okay, I got to catch him with a girlfriend, or I got to catch him, because basically the witnesses, like if you don't have a confession of adultery and you don't get caught, even though it might be happening, but you don't know because he lives in Timbuktu, you're stuck. They want proof of adultery. I mean, it's crazy. So please, people, do not believe this nonsense. It is not true. That is not the way, for people who believe in God, that is not the way God would want anyone to believe. So I hope this is clear to you. Sorry if I went on a rant a little bit, but I just want people to see that you can think for yourself and that life can be good, if you want it to be. And it's up to you to make that choice. So stick around for more information that will be coming your way. Please make sure you like, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you have any suggestions that you would like for any particular topic, please do so by commenting down below and supporting our channel. Thanks again. I hope to see you soon, and stay safe.